The light in the chamber of ascendancy was a living thing, a symphony of pearlescent colors flowing from the vaulted, crystalline ceiling and reflecting from the polished obsidian floor. It was the light of a million conquered suns, the distilled essence of an empire that had measured its age in the slow, majestic turn of the galactic core. Here, at the apex of all known space, sat the ruling council of the Xylos Ascendancy, beings whose forms were as much solidified light as they were physical matter. Their slender, exoskeletal bodies shimmered with the calm, unwavering glow of absolute authority, a luminescence that had pacified rebellions and awed lesser species into submission for millennia. Yet today, the light was troubled. It flickered with discordant hues of violet anxiety and sharp, crimson agitation, a subtle but undeniable sign of schism in the heart of the Empire. Before them, a holographic sphere dominated the center of the chamber. It was a projection of the ethereal veil, a tumultuous nebula of dark matter and rogue gravimetric fields that had long served as the Ascendancy's undisputed western border. For eons, nothing had ever emerged from it. It was a cosmic wall, a finality. Until now. Suspended in the holographic void was a fleet, if such a chaotic and asymmetrical collection of vessels could be called that. They were not the elegant, sweeping crystalline warships of the Xylan fleet, whose forms were poems of deadly geometry. These were brutish, functional things of dull, non-reflective metal, a hodgepodge of spheres, cylinders, and angular blocks that seemed to have no unifying design philosophy. They drifted in a loose, almost lazy formation, an affront to the very concept of military discipline. They are an insult to the stars. Strategos Kalen's voice was a low, resonant chime, but his internal light flared with the harsh blood orange of contempt. His own form was broader than the others, his crystalline shell hardened and faceted from centuries of command. A fleet of scavengers of cosmic detritus. Look at their configuration. No energy discipline, no squadron cohesion. Their ships bleed radiation signatures like wounded animals. They are primitives, and they have blundered into our domain. Opposite him, Archivist Lyra's light was a soft, inquisitive scion. Her form was more delicate, her hands clasped before her as she studied the projection with an intensity that bordered on reverence for the unknown. Primitives, strategos, who crossed the ethereal veil, an accomplishment our own finest pathfinders have deemed impossible for 1,000 cycles. Their ships may lack elegance, but they possess a technology of navigation that is, by definition, beyond our comprehension. To dismiss them as such is unwise. The prime luminary, seated on a throne of pure, solidified starlight that elevated him above the others, pulsed a slow, commanding gold. His voice was the synthesis of 1,000 harmonious tones, a sound that could shape worlds. The archivist speaks with reason. Arrogance is the rust of empires, Kalen. We have watched these humans for several rotations. Their transmissions are a chaotic storm of information, yet our linguistic engines can find no purchase, no pattern to their communication. Their energy signatures are illogical. They operate on principles that defy our understanding of physics. We must proceed with a caution befitting this mystery. Kalen's internal light flashed a defiant red. Caution, luminary, they have crossed into sovereign ascendancy territory. They drift just beyond the orbit of Xylos VII, a clear provocation. Every moment we hesitate is a moment they perceive us as weak. And what of their preposterous warning they broadcast upon their arrival? The gall of it is staggering. He made a gesture, and the sphere shimmered, replaying the message that had become the source of so much debate. A single clear tone, followed by a stream of data that their systems had finally, crudely translated. It was not a greeting. It was not a declaration of intent. It was a statement of fact, delivered with an unnerving placidity. A shadow is coming. The light is fading. We offer knowledge. We seek allies. Strategos let out a short, percussive sound, the Xylan equivalent of a laugh, sharp and dismissive. A shadow is coming, he mocked, his light flaring. They emerge from the deepest darkness of the galaxy, a place of chaos and death, and they presume to warn us of shadows. We who command the light of 1,000 star systems. We, the Ascendancy, we are the ones who cast the shadows in this galaxy. The Council was right to dismiss it as a primitive attempt at misdirection, a ploy to make us lower our guard. When we first received it, the junior members of my own staff laughed. They laughed at the warning from these metal-shelled barbarians. Archivist Lyra's cyan glow deepened. And yet, strategos, they have made no hostile moves. They maintain their position. They answer our hails with a repetition of that same message, nothing more. There is a patience to them, a discipline that is at odds with the chaotic appearance of their fleet. Their technology may be asymmetrical, but their behavior is not. It is measured, deliberate. She turned her gaze to the prime luminary. I have been studying the fragments of their language we have managed to parse. It is a language of immense complexity, with layers of context and conditional logic that suggest a deeply philosophical and scientific culture, not the grunts of barbarians. Philosophy will not protect them from our particle lances, Kalen countered, his voice ringing with absolute certainty. We have a fleet positioned at the edge of the Xylos VII gravity well, perfect formations, fully charged weapon arrays, the pride of the Ascendancy. One word from you, luminary, and we can erase this unsightly mess from our skies. We can send a clear message to whatever galactic vermin might be watching from the veil. This is our space, our light, our order. The chamber fell silent. The prime luminary's golden light held steady, his gaze fixed on the motley collection of human ships. He was the fulcrum upon which the fate of this first contact rested. His every instinct, honed over millennia of rule, screamed that Kalen's path was the simple one, the traditional one. The Xylos Ascendancy had not risen to dominate the galaxy through caution and philosophical debate, but through the decisive application of overwhelming force. Order was maintained by excising chaos, and these humans were the very definition of chaos. Their ships were an affront. Their message was an insult. Their presence was a violation. Yet Lyra's words echoed in the vast silence of his mind, beyond our comprehension. For an empire that had charted the fundamental laws of the universe, that had bent spacetime to its will and built cities from the hearts of stars, the idea of something beyond its comprehension was a terrifying, almost blasphemous concept. He looked at the human ships again, not at their crude shapes, but at the negative space around them. The way the sensors struggled to get a clean reading. The way they seemed to absorb light and energy rather than reflect it. They were holes in the fabric of reality, tiny pockets of absolute inscrutability. The warning, the prime luminary said, his voice softer now, a thoughtful hum. It spoke of fading light, a poetic turn of phrase, perhaps, a metaphor for some internal strife or societal decay they project upon the cosmos. Or a literal observation, Lyra interjected, her cyan light pulsing with earnestness. The archives are vast, luminary. There are legends, pre-imperial myths from the dawn of our species, stories of the great silence, of stars that vanished without a trace, of a darkness that did not just obscure but consumed. We dismissed them as the fears of a species not yet capable of understanding stellar evolution. Kalen's orange light intensified, a burning coal of impatience. Myths, children's stories to frighten hatchlings. We are the masters of this galaxy, not frightened children cowering from the dark. We are the Xylos Ascendancy. Let them send their shadows. We will meet them with a sun. He gestured to the fleet again. This is a test, luminary, a test of our resolve. To even entertain their nonsensical prophecy is to show weakness. We must act, now. The prime luminary remained motionless, the weight of ages pressing down upon him. He saw the two paths laid bare before him. One was the path of certainty, of fire and force, the path that had built his empire. The other was the path of doubt, of questions, of a humility his species had long since forgot. To choose the latter was to admit that there was something in the universe greater, or at least more knowledgeable, than the Ascendancy. It was an admission that could crack the very foundation of their culture. But to choose the former, to strike these strange, silent vessels, what if they were not the threat but the harbinger of one? What if, in their arrogance, they were about to execute the messenger? The silence in the chamber stretched, each moment a lifetime. The fate of two civilizations hung suspended in the shimmering, troubled light, waiting for a single word. A new light entered the chamber, a cool, serene silver that seemed to absorb the tension rather than reflect it. Oracle Valerius, the third and final member of the Inner Council, had arrived. His form was ancient, his crystalline shell clouded with the dust of nebulae and time, his movements slow and deliberate. He did not speak, but drifted towards the holographic sphere, his silver light washing over the depiction of the human fleet. The Oracle graces us, the prime luminary intoned, a hint of relief in his voice. Your wisdom is needed. Valerius's light remained placid, a deep and ancient calm. His voice, when it came, was like the whisper of gravity itself. I have been in communion with the deep currents. The song of the cosmos is dissonant. There is a note missing from the celestial choir, a silence where there should be a star's hum. He turned his ancient gaze from the hologram to the strategos. You see their ships, Kalen, and you see chaos. I see purpose, a purpose forged in a darkness we have never known. Their asymmetry is not a flaw, it is a design born of necessity. Their ships are not built for symmetrical fleet actions. They are built to endure. Endure what? Kalen's chime was sharp. Our judgment. No, Valerius replied, his silver light unwavering. The absence of judgment, the absence of light, the absence of everything. He looked to Lyra. The archivist is wise to remember the old tales. The great silence was not a myth, it was a memory we chose to forget, for it spoke of a universe that did not bend to our will. The prime luminary leaned forward, his golden aura casting long shadows across the chamber. Then you give credence to their warning. I give credence to the tremor I feel in the fabric of existence, the oracle stated. These humans, they are not conquerors. They do not radiate the avarice or the ambition we have seen in 1,000 other species. They radiate something far stranger. He paused, his silver light seeming to dim as he searched for the right concept. They radiate grief, a profound, ancient, and patient sorrow. It is the sorrow of a sentinel, of a watcher on an impossibly long wall. The chamber fell into a profound hush, broken only by the faint hum of the holographic projector. Kalen's contemptuous light faltered, replaced by a flicker of violet confusion. Grief, sentinels. The concepts were alien to the Xylan psyche, which recognized only the binary of dominance and submission. The idea of a power that was not used for conquest but for watching, for grieving, was utterly foreign. It was in that moment of stunned silence that a new signal registered from the human fleet. It was not a repetition of their warning. It was a request, transmitted in a flawless, syntactically perfect rendition of the Xylan high ceremonial language, a language so complex that it took most Xylans decades to master. The linguistic feat alone was a shock that rippled through the chamber in waves of shimmering disbelief. The message was simple and direct, devoid of threat or supplication. We request permission to present our evidence directly. We will send one envoy, unarmed, to a location of your choosing. The truth must be witnessed to be understood. The request hung in the air, a challenge not of arms, but of intellect and courage. To accept was to legitimize these newcomers, to grant them an audience an emperor might receive. To refuse was to betray a fear that the mighty Xylo's ascendancy was afraid of a conversation, afraid of a single, unarmed messenger. The prime luminary looked at his council. Kalen's light was a storm of conflicting colors, his military certainty warring with the undeniable evidence of the human's linguistic and technological prowess. Lyra's cyan light was bright and steady, a beacon of intellectual curiosity and hope. Valerius's silver was as calm as the void itself, an expression of profound and ancient knowing. The prime luminary's decision was made. The path of tradition had led them to this moment of uncertainty. A new path was required. He raised a hand, and his golden light solidified into a symbol of imperial decree. "Grant them passage," he commanded, his voice echoing with the weight of history. "Prepare the grand diplomatic concourse. Let us see the evidence of these sentinels. Let us hear the truth of their sorrow." The light in the chamber shifted, the discordant colors slowly coalescing into a unified, resolute gold. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Xylo's ascendancy was about to face the truly unknown, not with weapons, but with words. And deep within Stratego's Kalen, a cold, unfamiliar sensation began to bloom, the first seed of doubt. The laughter from his staff room, once a sound of confident mockery, now seemed like the hollow echo of a fool's hubris. The grand diplomatic concourse was a monument to the ascendancy's power, a space designed to intimidate and overwhelm. It was a vast, circular chamber suspended between two of the capital's highest spires, with walls made of transparent crystal that offered a breathtaking, vertiginous view of the ecumenopolis below, a planet-wide city that glowed with a network of light like a captured galaxy. The floor itself was a living star map, the constellations of the Xylan Empire burning softly underfoot. At the chamber's center was a raised dais for the prime luminary and his council, a focal point of absolute authority. It was here they received the fealty of conquered worlds and the pleas of supplicants. It was a stage for the exercise of unquestionable power. The human shuttle was a stark, functional craft, a dark gray wedge that settled onto the designated landing platform with none of the ceremonial grace of a Xylan vessel. It simply landed, its engines falling silent with an abruptness that felt jarringly efficient. A single ramp lowered, and from it emerged the envoy. The being was bipedal, encased in a form-fitting suit of a dark, non-reflective material. Its head was covered by a helmet with a smooth, opaque visor hiding all features. It was a walking cipher, an entity devoid of the expressive light and ceremonial regalia that defined Xylan interaction. It moved with a steady, unhurried gait, its steps silent on the crystalline floor as it walked the long path to the central dais. The assembled Imperial guards, clad in gleaming, light-forged armor, shifted uneasily, their own internal lights flickering with suspicion. The human's lack of presence was more unnerving than any overt threat. As the envoy reached the base of the dais, it stopped. A soft hiss of depressurization sounded, and the being reached up, unclasping its helmet. The faceplate retracted, revealing the human within. The sight was underwhelming. It was a female of her species, her features soft and asymmetrical, her skin pale and unshelled, shockingly vulnerable. Her hair was a dark mass pulled back from her face, and her eyes, two dark, deep pools, held an expression of profound calm. There was no fear in them, no awe. Only a quiet, focused intensity. She wore no symbols of rank, no jewels, no indication of her station. She was simply a person. "I am Ambassador Eva Rostova of the Sol Confederacy," she said, her voice clear and measured. It was the same voice from the transmission, a perfect translation of the Xylan tongue, yet spoken with an accent that was not of any known region of space. It was the accent of a machine that had achieved perfection. "I thank you for this audience, Prime Luminary." The Prime Luminary pulsed a regal gold. "You have made an extraordinary claim, Ambassador. You trespass in sovereign territory and speak of cosmic shadows. The burden of proof is yours. We are listening." Rostova gave a slow, deliberate nod. "The proof is not something that can be told. It must be shown. I ask for permission to interface with your holographic systems. The data I will present is vast, but I will endeavor to show you the most salient points." Strategos Kalen's light flared a sharp crimson. "You wish to connect your primitive technology to the heart of our capital, an absurd security risk. It will not be permitted." The ambassador's gaze shifted to Kalen. Her dark eyes seemed to absorb his aggressive light, her expression unchanging. "Strategos, the data is encrypted with quantum-level protocols that your systems will not be able to breach. However, it requires a significant amount of processing power to render in real time. My vessel's systems are insufficient. I am not asking to connect to your core command network, only to your visual display. The data stream is one way. It is a projection, nothing more. Your technicians can verify this." She spoke with such technical certainty, such calm authority, that Kalen's outburst was left hanging in the air, suddenly sounding less like a prudent objection and more like a fearful one. Archivist Lyra leaned forward, her cyan glow brightening with intellectual fervor. "Luminary, I recommend we allow it. The risk, if her claims are true, is minimal. The potential gain in understanding is immeasurable. Let our technicians create a firewalled interface. We must see this." The Prime Luminary considered this, his gaze fixed on the human. There was no deception in her posture, no guile in her steady gaze, only a profound, heavy seriousness. He gave a slight inclination of his head. "Proceed. Our technicians will monitor every packet of data. Any attempt at intrusion, and this audience is concluded." Rostova nodded again, a simple economic motion. She unclasped a small device from her belt and placed it on the floor. It hummed to life, and a beam of pure information shot upwards, connecting with the chamber's holographic emitters. The vast star map under their feet flickered and then vanished, replaced by an image of the galaxy. It was a familiar sight, the spiraling arms of their home, rendered in stunning detail. "This is the galaxy as your charts depict it now," Rostova began, her voice taking on the tone of a lecturer. "A static map of known systems, trade routes, and stellar classifications. It is a map of a place. But the universe is not a place. It is an event. It is a process. To understand what is happening, you must see it in motion." The galactic map began to move. Time was accelerating, flowing forward at an impossible rate. Millennia passed in seconds. Stars were born in fiery bursts of light and died in spectacular supernovae. Nebulae coalesced and dispersed. The galaxy was a living, breathing organism of light and gravity. The council watched, mesmerized by the celestial ballet. It was a beautiful, familiar dance. "We have monitored the light from 1 billion stars across this galaxy for centuries," Rostova continued. "We have archives of stellar data that stretch back to the dawn of our spacefaring age. We look not just at the stars, but at the light between them. We look for patterns, for anomalies. Now please direct your attention to the region you call the Great Empty on the galactic rim." The view zoomed in on a vast, dark expanse of space between two spiral arms. The Xylans had always known of it, a region curiously devoid of stars and nebulae. Their science had concluded it was a natural anomaly, a pocket of primordial hydrogen that had never ignited. "Your science is incorrect," Rostova stated plainly. "It was not always empty." The image reversed. Time flowed backward, and as it did, a miracle occurred on the display. Stars began to appear in the Great Empty, dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. A whole lost sector of the galaxy, a brilliant spur of a spiral arm, reappeared from the mists of time. It was vibrant and filled with light. The council let out a collective, soft chime of astonishment. "What trickery is this?" Kalen demanded, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "No trickery," Rostova said, her voice remaining level. "This is a reconstruction based on the archaic light still reaching us from the far side of the galaxy, light that traveled for 100,000 years, carrying the image of a past that no longer exists. Now, watch what happened." She let the projection move forward again, but this time much more slowly. They watched the lost arm of the galaxy in its prime. Then at its edge, a single star system simply went out. There was no explosion, no nova, no gentle fading of a dying red giant. One moment it was a brilliant point of light, the next it was gone, erased. A moment later, a neighboring system vanished in the same way, and then another. A patch of darkness was spreading like a stain of ink on a divine tapestry. It was not a violent conquest. It was a quiet, inexorable consumption. It was the silence. A wave of cold, shimmering dread passed through the chamber. The soft hum of the city below seemed to fade, replaced by a profound, cosmic horror. This was not war. This was extinction on a level they had never conceived. "We call it a non-baryonic, reality-collapsing phenomenon," Rostova explained, her voice a calm anchor in the rising sea of their fear. "It doesn't destroy matter in the conventional sense. It appears to unravel the spacetime that contains it, reducing it to a state of zero information. The star, its planets, any life, any history, it all ceases to have ever existed. The only thing left behind is a faint quantum signature, a scar in the fabric of reality." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. "We first detected it at the edge of our own exploratory space generations ago. At first we believed it was an instrument malfunction, then we confirmed it. A star had vanished, then another. We sent a warning back to our home world Earth, a warning that was not immediately believed. We were a young, fractious species then. There were those who laughed." The word hung in the air, resonating with a terrible familiarity. Kalen's light dimmed to a dull, bruised purple. "But the evidence became undeniable," Rostova continued. "The silence was spreading. It was slow, moving at a fraction of a percentage of the speed of light, but it was relentless. It forced our species to change. Our conflicts, our borders, our petty politics, they all became meaningless in the face of this. We had a choice, to squabble over the dwindling light or to unite and face the dark. We chose to unite." The projection shifted again. It now showed the human fleet, their strange, asymmetrical ships. "Our fleet is not a military force, prime luminary. It is a scientific expedition, an ark, and a network of watchtowers, all in one. Each ship is an independent, self-sustaining world. Our people are not soldiers. They are scientists, engineers, historians, artists. We live our lives on this long frontier, studying the silence, trying to understand it, trying to find a way to stop it. We are scattered and decentralized by design. If one ship is lost, humanity endures. Our strength is not in concentration, but in redundancy." She turned her gaze directly to the prime luminary, her dark eyes holding his. "We came here not to conquer, but to warn you. The silence is not confined to the great empty. It is advancing. We have tracked its progress. It has already consumed several star systems within your declared borders, systems you have marked in your own charts as stellar failures or gravitational collapses." She brought up a specific system, X934, a trinary star system the Ascendancy had lost contact with 2 centuries prior. Their official conclusion was that its complex gravitational dance had become unstable, causing the stars to collide and collapse into a black hole. "Look again," Rostova urged. "Scan the area for the quantum signature I described, a specific resonance of null information. Your sensors are capable of detecting it if they are calibrated correctly." She transmitted a complex string of data, the calibration parameters. The prime luminary turned to his chief science officer, who was observing from a side alcove. "Do it. Retask the Deep Space Observatory. Focus on X934. Use their parameters." The wait was agonizing. The chamber was filled with a silence that was no longer just the absence of sound, but a palpable entity, the very thing they were now being forced to confront. The human ambassador stood perfectly still, her face a mask of patient sorrow. She had done this before, he realized. She had delivered this terrible news to other worlds, other species. This was her life's work. The oracle's words came back to him, the sorrow of a sentinel. Then a chime broke the silence. The chief science officer's light was flickering wildly, a pale, terrified white. "Luminary, the signature, it's there. The resonance is exactly as the human described. The system, it wasn't a collapse, it was erased. It's gone." A tremor went through the grand diplomatic concourse. The living star map under their feet suddenly seemed like a gravestone. Every point of light was a potential victim. Strategos Kalen stood frozen, his brilliant, warlike light completely extinguished, leaving his crystalline form looking like dull, dead glass. His entire worldview, his unshakable faith in the power of his fleets and the supremacy of his empire, had been shattered by a quantum signature. They had been celebrating their dominion over a galaxy that was quietly and invisibly dying around them. The warning they had laughed at was not a trick. It was a eulogy. The prime luminary felt the crushing weight of millennia of imperial pride, a weight that now threatened to break him. He looked at the human, this small, soft-shelled being who carried a truth so vast and so terrible it could undo a civilization with its mere telling. Her calm was not a sign of weakness or apathy. It was the calm of acceptance, the calm of a people who had looked into the ultimate abyss and had not broken. It was a strength far greater than any particle lance. "What?" the luminary began, his voice a strained whisper, the grand harmony gone. "What can be done?" Ambassador Rostova's expression did not change, but a flicker of something new appeared in her eyes. It was not hope, not yet. It was the faintest ember of professional purpose, the focus of a doctor about to propose a difficult treatment. "Alone nothing," she said, her voice steady and clear, cutting through the chamber's atmosphere of despair. "The silence is not an enemy one can fight with warships. It is a fundamental law of the universe asserting itself, or perhaps a perversion of it. We do not fully understand its nature, but we have learned how to predict its path. We have learned how to build shields that can slow its advance, though not stop it entirely. And we have learned that knowledge is the only true weapon against it." Holographic display changed once more. It zoomed in on a singular, breathtaking object located in a desolate stretch of intergalactic space, just beyond the galaxy's edge. It was a ring, a megastructure of impossible scale, encircling a supermassive black hole. It was ancient, its surface dark and pitted with eons of micrometeoroid impacts. The Xylans had known of this object for ages. Their long-range sensors had detected it, and their astronomers had named it the Crown of Solitude. They had deemed it the inert, colossal monument of some long-dead precursor race, a testament to a forgotten power. "This is what your people call the Crown of Solitude," Rostova said. "We call it Stellar Aegis One. It is not a monument. It is a machine. It is the first and largest of a series of shield generators built by a civilization that faced the silence billions of years ago." A collective gasp, a shimmer of multicolored light, rippled through the Xylan contingent. The precursors, the mythical first ones, were a subject of deep reverence and academic debate. To see their work not as a ruin, but as a functioning piece of technology, was a revelation that shook the foundations of their history. "The Aegis uses the singularity at its heart to project a hyperdimensional field," the ambassador explained, as schematics and energy flow diagrams overlaid the image of the Great Ring. "This field stabilizes the fabric of spacetime in a vast conical area, effectively shielding a portion of the galaxy. It is the reason the silence has only consumed the outer arms and has not yet swept through the core. This machine is the only reason your empire and our species still exists." She pointed to a section of the ring that was flickering on the schematic. "And it is failing. The precursors are long gone. The machine has been running on automated systems for an unimaginable length of time. Its power cores are decaying. The field is weakening. The silence, it is beginning to push through the gaps. This is why its advance has seemed to quicken in recent centuries." The scale of the truth was devastating. Their entire history, their glorious empire, had played out under the protective shadow of an ancient, dying machine they had never even understood. They were not masters of the galaxy. They were tenants in a house whose foundations were crumbling. "For generations," Rostova continued, her voice resonating with the full weight of her mission, "humanity has been trying to understand this technology. Our disparate fleet, the one you saw as chaotic, is a network of mobile research outposts. We have been gathering data, trying to decipher the precursor's science. We believe we have made a breakthrough. We believe we know how to repair the Aegis, but we lack the resources, the industrial capacity. The sheer energy required to reignite its power cores is beyond our capabilities." She finally turned her full attention back to the prime luminary, her gaze direct and unblinking. The entire chamber held its breath. The moment had arrived. "You have that capacity," she stated. It was not a plea. It was not a demand. It was a simple, logical conclusion. "Your empire controls the energy output of 1,000 stars. Your people are masters of crystalline energy conduits and large-scale stellar engineering. We have the knowledge you lack. You have the power we need. Alone, we will both be consumed by the coming dark. Together, we may have a chance to see the next dawn. The silence that followed was absolute. The offer was laid bare, an alliance not of conquest or defense but of preservation, an alliance against reality itself. The prime luminary looked from the steady, waiting human to the stunned face of his strategos. Kalen's arrogance was gone, replaced by a hollow, nascent understanding. He looked to Lyra, whose cyan light was glowing with a fierce, brilliant intensity, the light of discovery, of purpose found. He looked to Valerius, whose ancient, silver calm seemed to say that this was the moment the cosmos had always been waiting for. His own empire, for all its might, was rigid, traditional, and resistant to change. It was an empire of light that had grown to fear the dark. Humanity, born in that darkness, did not fear it. They studied it. They adapted to it. They faced it with a quiet, relentless courage that the Xylans had lost somewhere amidst their countless victories. The prime luminary rose from his throne, his golden light suffusing the chamber not with the fire of authority, but with the warm, humbling glow of acceptance. He descended the steps of the dais, an act of equality no living Xylan had ever witnessed, and stopped before the human ambassador. "You came to us with a warning, Ambassador Rostova," he said, his voice now a single, clear, and somber tone. "An honest warning, and in our pride, some of us, we laughed." He glanced at Kalen, who lowered his head, his dull light a clear admission of his folly. "We will not make that mistake again. The Xylos Ascendancy accepts your offer of alliance. Our fleets, our engineers, our energy reserves, they are yours to command in this great work. We will help you mend the shield of the ancients." A wave of shimmering relief and resolve washed through the chamber. For the first time, human and Xylan stood not as potential adversaries, but as partners in a cause grander than any empire. Rostova gave a slow, solemn nod, the first hint of a weary smile touching her lips. "Then our work begins." The transformation of the Ascendancy was swift and total. The vast, gleaming Xylan war fleets, once instruments of conquest, were redeployed. They became escorts for human science vessels, protectors of engineering convoys, and mobile power relays for the gargantuan task ahead. The sight of the two fleets mingling was a study in contrasts. The perfect, glowing, crystalline ships of the Xylans flew alongside the dark, functional, asymmetrical vessels of humanity. It was a fleet of light and shadow, order and chaos, united against the encroaching void. Strategos Kalen, humbled and remade, threw himself into the logistics of the operation with a convert's zeal. He worked alongside human tacticians who thought not in terms of battle lines and kill ratios, but in terms of energy distribution and temporal mechanics. He learned that their chaotic formations were, in fact, sophisticated multi-layered sensor nets, and their primitive ships were marvels of efficiency and survivability. He learned a new kind of warfare, a war fought not with weapons but with science and industry. Archivist Lyra and her human counterparts established a joint knowledge base, a project of unprecedented scale. The Xylan archives, vast as they were primarily records of history, of conquests and bloodlines. The human archives were a dizzying repository of scientific data, theoretical physics, and xenobiological studies. They had cataloged thousands of extinct species from the Great Empty, preserving the memory of worlds that had been erased from existence. Lyra realized that humanity was not just a sentinel. It was a librarian for a dying galaxy, a keeper of ghosts. The prime luminary and ambassador Rostova formed a new joint council, a governing body for the allied forces. He learned of human culture, of their philosophies of individualism and collective responsibility, a paradox he struggled to comprehend. They had no single ruler, no emperor, yet they could act with a unity of purpose that rivaled his own command. Their strength, he came to understand, was not enforced from the top down, but generated from the bottom up, born of a shared existential understanding. Weeks turned into months. The joint fleet reached the stellar aegis. Its scale was even more awe-inspiring up close. A ring of dead, ancient metal, wide enough to house a planet, silent and cold. Xylan engineering teams, protected by human-designed energy shielding, began the perilous work of reactivating the precursor power conduits. It was a slow, arduous process. During one of the long work cycles, the prime luminary stood with Rostova on the observation deck of his flagship, the Luminance, watching the flurry of activity around the ancient ring. "I confess, Ambassador," the luminary began, his golden light a soft, contemplative glow, "I still struggle to comprehend the nature of your people. You have faced the ultimate horror for generations. You have watched suns vanish. Yet you do not despair, you do not rage, you work, you study, you endure. How?" Rostova watched a tiny Xylan repair drone trace a line of light along the Aegis's surface. "When you live on the edge of the abyss, you learn to appreciate the view," she said softly. "Despair is a luxury. Rage is a waste of energy. All we have is the work, the hope that we can buy one more day for the light, for everyone's light, not just our own." She turned to him. "We learned a long time ago that the universe doesn't care about empires or kings. It only cares about the laws of physics, and perhaps about life's collective will to understand those laws." It was then that a new signal came through. It was not from the fleet. It was from the Aegis itself. As the Xylan engineers carefully powered up a dormant section of the precursor machine's communication hub, a single, impossibly ancient message, held in a repeating buffer for billions of years, was finally released. Lyra's voice, trembling with an excitement that transcended species, came over the command channel. "Luminary Ambassador, we've found something, the core memory of the Aegis. It's not just schematics. There's a message, a final log entry from its builders." The message was projected onto the observation deck's main screen. It was not a language of sound or symbols, but of pure mathematical concepts and raw data, which the combined human-Xylan systems struggled to translate into a coherent form. The voice that emerged was a synthesis ancient and weary, the ghost of a mind beyond comprehension. "The shield is complete. The resonance is holding. The silence is contained for now. Our calculations suggest the Aegis will function for 5 billion cycles before power failure. It is the most we can do. Our own time is at an end. The Exodus is prepared." A pause in the ancient message, a moment of profound cosmic silence. "We do not know the origin of the silence. A natural decay of spacetime, a weapon of a conflict on a scale we cannot imagine, or something else entirely. Our deepest probes sent into the void returned one final, fragmented signal before they were erased. The signal was not a product of the silence. It was a signal from beyond it, from the other side." The observation deck grew cold. The Prime Luminary and Rostova stared at the screen, their minds reeling. The precursor's message continued, the translation strained, trying to convey a concept for which they had no words. The signal was simple, a warning. It said the silence is not the enemy. The silence is the cage, and something is rattling the bars. The message ended. It left behind a silence more profound and terrifying than any they had known. The silence, the existential threat they had just united to fight, the reality-consuming void, was a prison wall. And something else, something worse, was on the other side. They had spent all their energy, all their hope, on repairing the lock to a cage that held an even greater horror. The Prime Luminary looked at Eva Rostova. Her face, for the first time, was not calm. It was a mask of cold, stark, absolute shock. They had not been standing on the edge of the abyss. They had merely been looking at the wall of a much, much deeper one. Their war was not over. It had not even begun. He looked out at the combined fleet, the tiny lights of two great civilizations working together on a machine they now knew they did not understand. They had stopped laughing at one warning, only to be given another, infinitely more terrible. This time, however, they were not alone. He saw the shimmering Xylan vessels and the dark, resilient human ships, and for the first time felt not the pride of an emperor, but the humbling, terrifying, and yet strangely hopeful unity of a single galactic mind staring into a new and infinitely greater darkness. The work would continue. It had to, for the silence of the void was preferable to whatever screams might lie beyond it.